Hey guys, I'm Lobos. A longtime WoW player, and I was really inspired by a YouTuber named Big Old Bucket of Water. I'm gonna put his link in the description. He's got a fascinating YouTube channel that I think a lot of people can vibe with. He journals his trials and issues as a raid leader, going through prog as he self describes race to world last. And I think that's a perspective of rating that people don't normally cover. And I think it's really, really intriguing and informative because everybody talks about the top end and what are they doing and how do I be like them, but nobody talks about the trials and issues that we see towards the low end of rating. So I kind of want to cover some of that stuff. I'm currently the an officer in the final attempt guild here on Sargeras. I'm the officer in charge of recruiting, basically. And it didn't really start that way. I just saw a need and said, "Hey guys, I'll just start recruiting." So I just started pulling people into the guild. And from a recruiting perspective, it's a very very difficult thing to do, and I don't think it's often talked about. And I think it's something that should be discussed, and I think it's something that we can all do better. And I think there's a lot of things that Blizzard could do to help us. But I want to cover some of that. So Uh, recruiting for a guild that's pushing through Mythic rating is a 24/7 job, really. I find myself constantly browsing forums and different websites like Guilds of WoW or Raider.io, the WoW forums, basically anything that people can put a I'm looking for guild post somewhere. I'm constantly browsing it, and it's really difficult place to be. A lot of guilds raid the same time. So I see a lot of guilds posting for, hey, we raid Tuesday, Thursday, we raid Tuesday, Wednesday, we raid Tuesday, Sunday. And you can kind of see that when you look through the WoW forums here. Um, like right here, you see Tuesday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And what does that do? That creates a very difficult pool to recruit from. Because what that means is a lot of guilds are fighting essentially for the same people at the same times. Uh, and that's another thing is that a lot of guilds are fighting for like the same times. So it's obviously the prime time to raid is Tuesday plus a day, and then seems to be, at least from my perspective, I'm an East Coast guy, so it seems to start around 8, end around midnight. That kind of time frame is usually what I see people looking for. Um, and it becomes very difficult because I kind of see it as a game of hungry hungry hippos where marbles get thrown in the plate and everybody's just jumping after whoever posts first. And there's a lot of posts for similar roles. I see a lot of posts for unholy DKs and rep paladins looking for a home, and I think that's a good thing, right? Like Blizzard just reworked these classes this expansion, and they're a lot of fun, and a lot of people want to play them, which is great. But that also leads to other issues that we have as recruitment officers, and a lot of that is the pool basically becomes a huge pool of those classes because everybody wants to play them. And what that means is a lot of the guilds that end up needing bodies to fill roles because you have to have 20 in a mythic raid is that you end up with a less than ideal raid comp, right? You can end up with a raid comp that's super melee heavy. You may have 3 or 4 unholy DKs or just death knights in general. I've seen some frost as well. But you might also end up with like 3 DKs and 2 ret pallies. And it makes progression a little more difficult because you lose out on the versatility of having a robust raid comp. And for things like Salad Bar or Mythic Paladins, which we're currently progging on right now, it makes it a lot more difficult not having that ideal comp, right? Like we don't have a pool of players or even alt characters to pull from where we can run the quote BIS strategy where it's three marksman hunters where we can have hunters mark on each boss, cleaving constantly, and just destroying those bosses really fast, right? We end up we're currently running into an issue where we're super melee heavy, so it becomes a lot harder on our healers. The healing absorbs on that boss become more difficult to deal with because of the proximity of those characters, and the um, execution sentences are more difficult to deal with because we have to have melee run around to help soak, so they lose uptime on the boss. So that's kind of a big issue to deal with. And then we also end up with things like we have our current raiders trying to swap tunes around because the raid pool is so small right now of different classes and different characters to play. So we end up having people see a need, fill a need, right? And we'll have people go, oh, well, I know we have three or four DKs on the roster. How about I switch to mage? And then we have somebody that, it's not their main, so they're not as familiar with it. They're probably slightly behind the gear curve, if not already behind the gear curve, and they're gonna not be as comfortable with it. They haven't progged with it for months, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, right? Even if they played in Mythic Plus, it's not the same as spending 3 or 4 nights progging a boss like Mythic Paladins, which is just an ability vomit of boss stuff. Like if you've seen that fight, it's just everything on the ground is all consecrations and different light colors and swirly hammers and shields getting thrown at you. Like it's insane. It's a lot of fun. I love the boss. It's a lot. And to have somebody go from being melee to ranged is a big ask, and it becomes harder for people like us that try to recruit. And that can set your raid back some because you're trying to fill needs that wouldn't otherwise be there. Um, so another big thing I'm seeing is how do you set your guild apart, right? So what I see when I'm browsing through the forums is everybody has some sort of copy paste. Hey, we're looking for people. Here's our spam, our message, our attempt to try to snag you into our group. And if it becomes something premium like an evoker or a warlock or a mage that's even semi geared or semi progressed, if they have even one mythic kill, I mean those posts ends up with 10, 15, 20 posts on there saying, hey, join our guild, join our guild, join our guild. And you just kind of hope that your times line up and you're the furthest progressed because that's probably what they're going to do. And what that does is it creates an environment where it becomes a recruitment person's paradise, right? They get the ability to kind of go to whatever guild they want. If they don't like it, they just leave and go to the next one. And along the way, they get whatever gear and progress and kills were in that guild. And they're just like, yeah, this wasn't for me. And they can move up the chain really quickly. Um, they don't necessarily have to be great players because I've even seen people that are like, hey, I got my first four bosses killed. Now I want a guild that's progressed on crown. So they won't even look at guilds that are progging on paladins like my guild is right now. And that's a potential that we lose out on as well because it's one less body that we can have. Because they're just like, well, I've got four bosses, and they know that guilds up there in progression are just looking for bodies to help fill seats so they can prog and so that they can keep rating as a guild. And it's rough. Quite often I send out 20 messages or so, and I hope I can get a response from at least five. And out of those five, maybe I can get one person to join. And even that is not always the case. Quite often I get cussed out because I'll see, hey man, your raid times are 8 to 11, but we raid from 10 to 12:30, and people think, well, you didn't read my raid time, so you're an idiot, and I can't even waste my time with you. And it was like, some people are more flexible with those spots, with those raid times, and if they have the opportunity to raid in a guild that's further progressed, they make things work. So, you take your shot, you shoot your shot at somebody and say, hey, this is what I want. Can I, or, are you interested? We want you. You're a class that we need. And, even some of the times you're getting less than ideal responses from people. Um, you also have the issue that there's different types of people looking for guilds, right? Like you have people that have their mains. And they main raid on Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever. And then they're like, well, you know what? I also want to raid the weekends. So those times are blocked out. And there's of course there's people that also just want to raid the weekends. But those prime times are already soaked up for them on their main character. So how can we deal with that as a guild? One of the things you can do as a guild is change your raid times from Tuesday plus a day and choose different days, I guess. Go for Mondays and Sundays or uh Mondays and Wednesdays. A lot of people don't like to raid on the weekend because it's the weekend, right? Like it's summertime, at least here currently right now in the US, the weather's breaking, people want to be outside, people want to go to the pool, people want to go on vacation, school's out for the time being. So, this roster boss that we're having is very difficult to deal with. So we're looking for other ways to do it. And do do guilds make mistakes by saying, well, we want to raid Tuesdays and Thursdays or Tuesday, Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever day? Is that an issue for guilds? And maybe, I don't know. It it definitely makes things more complicated from a recruiting perspective because everybody is competing for the same raid spots, raid times, raid classes. Um, so when you need to get bodies in the guild, you end up recruiting people that may not have may not have even seen a mythic boss yet. And that's not shots at anybody. That's not talking down on anybody. It's just you end up going, hey, do you have a pulse? Cool, let's bring you in. Let's see how you do. And they could be behind the gear curve. They could be behind the progression curve that you're looking for, and you're immediately bringing them into a boss that they may not be. They probably aren't comfortable with. They're not progressed with. They're not geared for. And you just kind of say, "Hey, do your best." Like you throw them to the wind, and you hope that they've watched the video and read up on it and done the uh Warcraft logs to see what talents they should be playing and um stuff like that. And that's not always the case, man. Not everybody takes this game to the same level of seriousness as everybody else. So how can you alleviate that? Well, you have to alleviate gear gaps by going back and doing re-clears. Well, that's its own issue, right? Having to go back and re-clear, I didn't realize myself was such a big deal, and turns out it is. A lot of people just don't want to go back and kill bosses they've already killed. Either they got their loot and they don't care to go back and do it again, or there is no loot on the boss and they just don't care to go back, or they're just like, man, I'm all prog or bust at this point. Like we've been working on this, we've been dealing with this raid for, in my guild, it's been, you can see it's been 2 months since the guild started. So we've been progging for give or take 8 weeks, and I haven't even been in the guild for the full 2 months here. I'm just I'll have to give you guys my journey to how I got to here at a different time, but you know, re-clearing becomes a problem, and for a lot of the guilds that raid 2 days, like my guild and a lot of the other guilds, like here on the WoW forums, are we have very very limited time. 6 hours or less, and doing a re-clear of even mythic chimeras can take give or take 30 minutes, right? To given time for people to show up that are late, because work ran late or traffic was rough, whatever. Things happen. It's life. And, till you pull the boss and kill it, it's take 30 minutes and then get to Void Spire. So that's 30 minutes out of 5 or 6 hours of time there. That's a big percentage. But you got to give the new guys reps too. Like they got to be able to see the mythic bosses and strategy and feel the guild and hear the guild and vibe with the guild. And, you know, progging isn't always a great indicator of guild vibes. Like, tensions get raised, attitudes get raised, people get frustrated, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're a recruit and that's all you see, then who wants to stay in a guild that's like 60 attempts deep on a boss they should have killed at 40 attempts? Like it's. I know I wouldn't want to stay in a guild like that where they're just always at each other's throats and that's all I ever see. It's like, well, who wants to be a part of this? Um, so, so you got to try to find time and ways to manage that. And as a guild and as a guy that's trying to recruit for that, you know, what do I suggest? Well, obviously we need things like a Mythic Plus Day where it's smaller groups where you can get to know your recruits and get to reach out and communicate and talk to those guys and vibe with them. Um, Doing things like alternate nights where it's Saturday and you hang out and do your thing and you raid either on an alt or you just do a heroic clear, something like that. Just different ways to find and build a community. Um, and also help gear. You're bringing in people that may not have seen nearly as much progression through heroic, through mythic, and they may not have all their best gear. We're recruiting people that are just like, hey, I want to try mythic, and we're we're throwing them pretty far into the mythic progression at this point. And Blizz did a good job, in my opinion, this year or this season rather, uh, helping people gear. Being able to gear through Mythic Plus is the way they have created it and making it a lot more alt friendly. In my opinion, has been a blessing from my perspective right now of the things I'm seeing because I can get a recruit that's sitting around 270 item level and just say, hey man, can you push to 280? And you know what, that even with the guild's help or not, if we can't get get our times to align during non-raid days, it 10, 10, 15 plus mythic plus runs and they can get to 280 really quickly. Because farming is easier. Once you get the achievement, it becomes cheaper to upgrade. So it is a big help. It helps you gear your ults and stuff like that too. Uh, another big issue I'm seeing too is to do mythic raiding. You obviously need you need 20 people in the raid to kill the boss, right? Now, of course, you can go with 19 or less, but I'm saying you need 20 people. And to have 20 people and to hopefully have some options, you got to have a semi decent bench. You want somewhere around 22, 25 people. And who wants to sign up to be on the bench, right? Like, we're all in pushing Mythic and we want to get CE, cutting edge, and we all want to get to kill the new boss. But, who wants to sit on the bench while somebody's streaming attempts and you don't get that part of the boss kill, especially, you know, going back to the re-clear problem, right? The the problem is who wants to sit on the bench and wait? Well, nobody. Especially if the guild's not going back to re-clear. And I think another problem that goes hand in hand with that is the way Mythic raids lockouts work, right? The first 3, 4 bosses have a lot of really good gear on there, but nobody goes back and clears them because everybody wants to prog at this point because people feel that item level is no longer really an issue. So, getting that last piece that might have a few more of your main stat than, the Mythic Plus that you have, or it might have your best weapon or whatever, it's sure it's an upgrade, right? But it's not such a drastic upgrade that you're going to go from, the bottom of the meters to the top. So it, the loot has become less of an issue, and becoming less of an issue is creating more problems for guilds that have to go back and re-clear. So you're kind of stuck in this paradox of, do I go re-clear? Do we not re-clear? Do we go after those bis? Do we not go after those bis items? Like, how do we handle this as a guild? And when I'm trying to bring people in, and they're like, "Well, how do you guys handle Mythic?" It's like, well, honestly, right now we're just kind of pushing prog because item level and gear isn't really our problem. It's getting reps on the boss and then killing it. And we don't want to burn out constantly wasting almost, I don't know, a full raid night going back to clear or re-clear bosses that we've already killed. Plus, you're hoping you one-shot it, but we're all human. We make mistakes. We may wipe a time or two on bosses that we've killed. It can be frustrating. And it's frustrating for recruits. They're like, dude, I'm here to Mythic Plus, or sorry, to Mythic Raid, and I don't get that opportunity because you guys don't re-clear, and you guys are only doing prog. Uh, so it's very frustrating. At least from their perspective. Uh, I know Flex Mythic is coming this week, this Tuesday. The Sporefall is dropping, which I think is cool. I, I know they've done, the whole flex rating thing in the past, and it creates breakpoints where, you don't really want your fourth or fifth healer that would normally be on the bench in the raid, because now you have five healers for 15 people, or, whatever. So I'm hoping Blue's really thought this out as far as all that stuff goes, to kind of help alleviate some of those problems for guilds that have less people or are healer heavy or whatever. I remember those issues when the whole normal and normal turned to flex, normal and heroic turned into flex. Um, so I'm excited for that, because then that bench that we've been looking for and building and trying to keep involved in the guild and keep around sticks around, because now we can get them in more prog fights. Um, but then this creates more issues of, well, do we go try for the flex raid to help bring more people in? Do we, so that we can bring our bench around, or do we finish our prog on paladins? We're gonna have to look at our raid group on Tuesday and see where we're at. So I have a lot of thoughts and feelings on this stuff. I got some more ideas on this topic. If you guys find it interesting and you want some more of it, let me know. Drop a comment below. Tell me you hated it, loved it, any struggles you guys are dealing with, any advice you guys have. I'm happy to hear it. I've been doing this for like 2 weeks now, and I see a lot of things that are causing problems, not just my guild, but things that I'm starting to see from other guilds here when I read through these posts of guilds looking for people. So I'm interested on your guys' take. Let me know. I'm Lobos. I'll see you next time.